Hi, welcome everybody. So this is the first live stream I'm doing of 2024. I hope everyone had a happy new year. I know it's past a week after New Year, but still, happy New Year, everyone. And I hope you had a wonderful holidays. You might have noticed that the page was quite quiet during the holidays. That's because I was trying to focus on my family and just be present for them instead of on the podcast. But I'm back and very excited for this new year. And I decided that it would be a cool idea to do some more live streams just to kind of keep everybody updated and engaged on what's happening and to kind of get feedback about what you're wanting and what you're enjoying and what you're not enjoying. So, anyways, I I am just excited to be here and excited to hear your thoughts about 2024. What's happening in your life? If you are watching, I want to hear from you. What's going on for your 2024 goals? Let me pull up my notes. I think I made a few notes here to see what I was going to talk about. All right, so yeah, how was your holiday? What goals did you set for yourself? Or are you someone who doesn't like to set New Year's goals? Because that's perfectly fine too. Sometimes I would set goals like in February because by the time New Year's rolled over, I was like, I haven't thought about it enough. So that's completely understandable if you don't know what you have set for your goals, anyways. So 2024, we're going to keep going with the podcast. I've been loving it. I love meeting all the people who come on the show. And I just kind of wanted to get a feel for what your favorite show has been. Have you listened to all of them? Which ones are you particularly enjoying? Are you enjoying the traditions, the holiday celebrations, like the Halloween episode and the Thanksgiving one, or do you really like the ones that are about creatures like the Selkies, or do you really enjoy the music episodes? We've had several musicians come on. So, what has been your favorite episode, and what do you want to see or hear more of? In the past, we really pushed the YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is going to stay. We're going to keep going because I love that you can see our faces, but I also really want to make sure that people know that you can listen if that is your preferred method. You can listen via podcast on any podcasting platform that whatever you are. If you listen on Apple or on Spotify, or I used to be like Google Podcast is disappearing and Stitcher has disappeared, which makes me really sad. Those were the two I was listening to on the most. So, but wherever you're listening, we're basically in most of those places. Okay, so what do you use? Do you watch it on YouTube, or do you listen? Do you have a preferred method? Comment down below, and if you're coming on right now, just comment down below and let us know where you are watching or listening from. If you haven't figured out by now, I'm in Texas. So I live in San Antonio, which is a very big city, but I grew up here in San Antonio, so it's very much home. Okay, so some new exciting things that are happening in 2024. Um, the last guest that we had on, Donna Lee Fields, and I are going to be doing a monthly collaboration in a new podcast, but it'll be just on the Fabric of Folklore podcast YouTube channel, and also on the same podcasting platform, so you don't have to subscribe to a new one. But we're going to be doing a monthly, and I think what we're going to do is a live stream. So We're just trying out new things to see what works best. I think the plan for this next one will be to live stream via LinkedIn. Um, and so I will, as that comes closer, I will definitely let you know. But the fairy tale flip episodes are going to be a deep dive into different fairy tales. So each month we're going to look at one fairy tale and we're going to kind of dissect it and find out where it started from, what different versions there are in different countries, if it traveled at all, how old it is. And we're going to look at deeper meanings and significance of those specific fairy tales. But we really want you to be engaged in this. And so, one of the things that we're going to do is on a weekly basis, I'm going to be I'm going to be reading one of the stories for you to listen to in advance, and then we're going to do a poll. And based off of the poll, we will choose the story that is most popular, and we will talk about that particular fairy tale, and we will we highly suggest that you send in your comments and your questions because we want you to be able to be a part of that. That's part of the reason why we wanted to do a live stream, because when you do a live stream, people can engage with you and chat with you, and it's kind of more of a conversation. So that's kind of the idea behind that. Love to hear your thoughts on that. So if you have any thoughts, make sure you're commenting down below. And if you have a fairy tale that you particularly want us to divulge, to dissect, make sure you let us know that too, because we really want this show to be engaging for you. The show is for y'all. So keep a lookout. We haven't really decided how I don't know if I'm going to be uploading the stories onto the podcast or not. So we'll just see how this goes, and if you particularly enjoy it audio or if it'll just be on the YouTube channel. I'm not really sure what is going to be preferred by the audience, so we'll just see how that goes. All right. Another fun and exciting thing that I am working on this year is I'm writing a children's book. That was actually the whole reason I started the podcast, because I wanted to write a book series for my children, and I wanted it to be around folklore, and I wanted it to be well researched. And so I thought it would be a lot more fun if I started a podcast and I was able to do the research, via interviews. And so this has been so much fun, and I love it. And one of my guests actually suggested that I consider doing a folktale retelling. So initially, I started writing it as a picture book, and I was really excited about having it be at a target age for 4 to 8 year olds, because that's where my children are primarily. But my storytelling is kind of long-winded, and so I was having a really difficult time condensing it. One of the things that I've been learning about is that, especially in children's books, word count is really important. And so my word count was around 2,000 words, and a picture book, the number I was trying to get at was 1,000. But upon further research, in case anyone is interested in writing their own children's book, 1,000 is actually way longer than the market is actually purchasing right now. Market trends are showing that parents are only buying books with 500 words or less. And honestly, I understand that, because as a mom with young kids, when I like to read a long picture book once, but then it's not really a book that I want to read over and over again. And so what the plan is at this point is I'm going to be rewriting it into a young adult, a very young reader chapter book. So I think so still for a younger age group. Anyway, so that's going to be in the works, and I will give you more updates as I go along. I find it really nerve-wracking to tell people that I'm writing a book, actually, because I feel like I don't know. I feel like it gives you a lot more pressure, but I also like telling y'all because maybe it'll help me stay more accountable and actually get it done faster. So I'm really excited about this project, and let me know if you have any ideas that you want me to write about, because I'd love to hear them. All right, what else? So I'm reworking the books right now, and it is a struggle trying to figure out writing schedule and podcasting and, mothering life. So it's just, everything takes longer than you would like it to, especially when you're a parent. So my ideas about the Facebook Live was that I would talk about new updates, things that are happening, tell you about things that are happening on the show, and then also talk about the most recent past episodes in case you missed those episodes, and talk about what you have to look forward to. So the last 4 episodes, so episode 35, I interviewed Loose Ends Project, which was really an amazing nonprofit organization that helps pair crafters with crafts that are unfinished. And they're unfinished usually due to a death or just an inability to finish. Like someone develops arthritis and they no longer can quilt, or they no longer can knit, or they no longer can crochet. So most of the crafts in the Loose End projects are fiber arts. And the podcast, that particular episode, is slightly different than what most of my podcasts are, because usually I take a topic and I try and find the history and the historical context and the deeper meanings. But this one I kind of made an exception for, because it is still within the folk art realm, but I just thought it was such an amazing project that I feel like more people need to know about. So if you're a crafter, or you have a craft that your grandmother or your aunt or your mother started but weren't able to finish, make sure that you are looking at this organization, Loose Ends Projects, and sign up. Okay, so that was episode 35. 36, I interviewed Josh Porthouse, who goes by Porter, on values, value systems, and druids. And he has his own podcast called Transacting Values. And on the podcast, we talked about the power of knowing your own values. And he has people come on and talk about all areas of their life, but he has them focus usually on speaking about their own personal values. And one of the things that he mentioned was that the top 3 values that he hears people repeat over and over again are trust, humility, and integrity, which I found really funny because none of those were actually on my top 5 list. But they're all good. Obviously, I think they're great. But those are the ones that were mentioned over and over again. Trust, humility, and integrity are ones that people really seem to cling on to. And then we also talked about the druids and how a lot of what they called magic, we now call science. And it's just a different way of looking at how you evaluate the world. So that was a really great episode. And his podcast, again, is Transacting Values. I was also a guest on his podcast, Transacting Values, as well as Dine with the Divine with Ashley. And she also has a very folklore-centered podcast, which I highly recommend. She's hilarious and so fun. And it was such a pleasure to be on her podcast. So definitely check her show out, Dine with the Divine. The last episode of 2023 was called Why Christmas with James Cooper, and it was all about the tradition of the Christmas trees and other greenery, and how far back those celebrations go, and why we somehow associate a Christmas tree in our house with the birth of Jesus. And so, I'm sorry, I have a tickle on my nose. I don't know what's going on there. Anyways, it was so interesting because it can be traced back as far as Romans, but it surely went hundreds of years before. So there were definitely pagan traditions that the Romans incorporated into their own traditions. And so the greenery around the winter solstice during those dark times, what has been part of traditions in the northern hemisphere for a very long time. So that was really cool to learn about. There was so many fun, interesting stories and folklore stories in that episode. So if you haven't given Why Christmas number 37 a listen, definitely listen to that one because it was so fascinating. And then the most recent one that I just posted was flipping fairy tales on their heads and winter celebrations with Donna Lee Fields, who I was just speaking about, who we're doing the fairy tale flip with. And she studied fairy tales in her doctoral program. And she's currently a teacher trainer, but she's really passionate about fairy tales and had wanted to start this podcast, but really just wanted someone to bounce ideas off of. And she wanted it to be more interactive and not just her doing a monologue. So like I'm doing right now. But I'm happy if someone has a question. I'm happy to answer those questions. Anyway, so that's why I'm collaborating with her, and I'm really excited about the fairy tale flip. But so we talk about specific fairy tales, about how a lot of times the way we read them today was not how they were originally written. And in many of the fairy tales, the witch in the original versions were actually heroines rather than villains. And so it was a really fascinating conversation. And then we also discussed winter celebrations in that one because that was one of her lesson plans that she has on her website, where she provides lesson plans for teachers. And it was all about the different religions around the world and how they celebrate winter and what they do, and looking at the different similarities and differences. And so it's a really fantastic episode. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend it. And so if you're watching this, I will be putting in the comments links to all of those episodes that I mentioned. So what you have to look forward to in the next couple of weeks, we have Kendall Haven, who wrote the book on the science of storytelling, and he studied it and he teaches it like no one else has before. It was such a great episode, and you're going to love it. Stina Gray is a Swedish storyteller, and she also sings in her storytelling and folklore, and she has such an enchanting presence and voice, and she's just written a book as well, and so that's a beautiful episode as well. Sabrina Fletcher, it came on. We already spoke as pre-recorded, but she spoke to us about how she's using storytelling in her grief circles. So it was so fascinating discussing how mythology can really be healing, which I hadn't really considered in that context before, but it's a very powerful episode. And then we have Bruce Boyce, who is a podcaster and blogger historian, and he talked to us about Joseph Campbell, who is one of the most well-known, influential American writers who studied mythology all around the world and different world religions, and how they are so much more similar than we imagine. And he looks up at a lot of the different creation stories and mythologies and finds their similarities, and really drives home the point that humanity is one race. We're one people. And anyways, if you haven't read a Joseph Campbell book, they are very I've only read one. I read The Power of Myth, but I found it very inspirational. So I definitely recommend his writings. He wrote The Hero of a Thousand Faces, which was very influential for lots and lots of storytellers, including filmmakers like Star Wars. So that's what you have to look forward to for this upcoming, these new, um, these following weeks. But I also really am interested in hearing about what you want to hear about, and if there's someone that you follow in particular that you want me to interview, let me know, because that is really helpful for me to know which direction you're wanting to go. I love hearing your recommendations. So I think I'm going to call it now. I think I've covered everything. Um, and I'm just really excited to be doing this podcast. And uh, thank you. Thanks. Keep the book alive.